Hey everyone, and welcome back to Amaranth Bay. Last time we started to build our version of Duluth's Canal Park, and today we're going to build up some infrastructure to allow people to access this area in style, mostly focusing on this Single Point Urban Interchange and the highway that surrounds it. First, though, I wanted to kind of bound off the area we have to work on, so I'm going to extend the lake walk over here in the same style as we built it in the last episode, and align it with what will eventually be the downtown grid. From what I can tell, the stretch of I-35 that runs along the waterfront in Duluth is built on a large rail corridor that still has some rail running through it, so I'm going to start with that because obviously the path the rail can take is a lot less flexible than that of the highway. So I want to run that in a nice gentle slope from pretty much bordering right up against the shoreline, where it is at some point going to access some of our industrial areas, and bring that route right up here along the lake walk. And then I want to squeeze this farthest reach of the downtown road as close as I can while still leaving room for the freeway to snake through here. And to create the actual route of the freeway, I'm going to use Network Multi-Tool just to get that nice smooth connection. Just going to do a little bit of raising and lowering with Move It to try to get really gentle slopes, especially on the rail, while still having enough clearance at the freeway overpass. It's been a while since I've built an interchange in Cities Skylines 1, so I'm just going to do things one step at a time and not try to worry too much about how it looks at first, and just trust that all the detailing will be able to make it look nice. I generally find it's easier to build the entrance and exit lanes attached to the freeway and the interchange itself, because those are a lot less flexible than the center portion of the ramp. So you can get those looking nice and realistic, and then just have this stretch of ramp in between, which can kind of absorb a lot of the curving and sloping that you need to do to get these ramps at the proper angles and the proper curve. I think that's especially important on the portions that attach directly to the freeway, because the freeway itself wants to go on in a straight line, whereas the ramp wants to start curving up. So if you use Node Controller's sloped node function, it's going to look really weird. So you actually need a flat section for that first short segment of ramp, which you can adjust with Node Controller to get these nice smooth transitions, and then you can immediately start sloping up with this long center section of ramp. After that's taken care of, it's really just a matter of making sure there's a nice smooth slope between the remaining nodes, and also making all of those nodes sloped using Node Controller. I realized that I forgot to add right turn slip lanes as well, which is kind of essential for a SPUI. Then I need to make a few more adjustments with Node Controller, like shifting over this additional right turn lane here, squeezing down these nodes on the avenue portion of the interchange so that I can get some more realistic slip lane curves where I need them, and then some sharper angles to the intersections where people aren't actually going to be turning, which you might be able to visualize here a little bit better as I add the lane connections. Of course, some of these intersections are not really going to work well without blocking off certain turns with Traffic Manager, so I'm just going to identify basically every single lane and where it needs to go. For example, if I didn't do that, people would be able to turn off of this intersection here into the slip lane, which obviously doesn't make any sense. That's pretty much it for the functionality of this thing. I'm not going to worry about a time traffic light or anything, at least not yet. We'll see how much traffic it actually has to eat up later on when we get to the downtown build in a future episode. So we're going to get to the detailing, starting with the markings. I'm going to go in and create some IMT presets for this exit lane. I'm just going to have a single preset that I use for every single similar intersection. I find it's a lot easier to keep your preset area of IMT uncluttered and just make a few adjustments as you go, rather than having a unique preset for every single possible variation. So I'm going to take that and paste it into all four of these nodes. The decoration for the actual intersection portion of the interchange is a little bit more challenging because we have all these various textures that are kind of clashing a bit. So I'm just going to cover up the whole thing with some ploppable asphalt, and we're going to plop a whole bunch of details on top of it, mostly using IMT to create these lines at the intersection, and also filling in the pavement islands here through our kind of fake intersections where the slip lanes meet. I'm also going to use decals to create the crosswalks, as the in-game crosswalk doesn't actually go across here. It kind of goes across in sections at the end of each segment. So I'm just going to create a fake crosswalk here. And then we have all these ugly kind of curving asphalt areas that you wouldn't find in a real SPUI, at least not usually. So I'm going to have to go in and manually fill all those in with some ploppable pavement blocks. It can get a little tedious to keep doing this over and over again, but one of my main ideas with this series is that I want to keep the scale a little bit smaller than I did with Todos Santos. So I'm only going to have to do like 2, maybe 3 big intersections over the course of this series. At least that's what I'm thinking right now. So that really helps to kind of motivate me to do some of this more tedious stuff, knowing that we'll be able to dedicate more time to doing the really fun stuff. I mean, I do enjoy these sorts of infrastructure builds, but I think kind of doing a little bit of everything is going to make this series more fun, as opposed to doing dozens of intersections like this. Here's the rest of the details filled out here. I think it looks all right. There are some built-in things on the freeway segments that don't look so good, but we still have some more detailing to do, and I'll try to fix those up as much as I can. The sort of detailing I'm starting to do here is exactly the kind of stuff that I find really fun in small doses. Getting all these directional signs properly set up with the correct arrows and naming. You might be able to tell that we're switching from I-35 to I-42 because it's the meaning of life. But having the scale of the city toned down a little bit is just going to allow me to focus more on getting the little details right. Like these things in Duluth, they have these like really, really brown kind of rusted color. I assume that's rust. So I want to focus on things like that. And for this in particular, I'm going to take these gantry assets, color them brown, and I realize that they're kind of just hovering here, so I need to add these little concrete supports sticking out from the freeway as well. And that's not the most noticeable detail, but it is the sort of thing you notice when you go through to record a first-person video of a drive through the city. If you've seen any of my Todos Santos ones, you'll probably know what I'm talking about. But I ended up doing a kind of little detail pass before recording each of those. And I think it's honestly easier just to get those details in when you're originally building an area instead of having to go back and add all of them after the fact. So just in case I want to do some first-person drive videos like that, which I almost certainly will for this series, I want to get all these details right now so that I don't have to do that later on. I wanted to make sure the signage for people exiting the avenue to access the freeway was correct as well. Unfortunately, I didn't have all the proper arrows included in the fonts that I was using, but I did my best with what I'm sure that sound isn't going to overstay its welcome. I think I did my best with what I had at the time, and the final result looks nice enough. Just going to kind of try to blend this all together with some wear decals, and then we're going to move on to some more detailing. I'm going to keep the details down here on the bottom portion of the freeway pretty straightforward. Just going to add these road barrier networks to either side of the highway. I'm also going to add some weeds growing up from the shoulder, adjust them using the random angle option, and reduce the probability to 21%. And that way they'll just look better. And then I'm going to take that, and it's super easy just to copy and paste these to all the segments in between intersections using that function of IMT, and we can get that pasted all the way along this stretch of freeway. Most of this interchange seems to be held up by pillars, but there are these kind of concrete supports. So I wanted to take these assets and just morph them around a little bit with PO so that we get these nice steep slopes, and we can get a similar look to that for this initial portion of each on and off ramp. For the exits where people are going to be driving toward this blunt point at the end of the barrier network, I wanted to add some somewhat softer barriers to make any crashes into this area a little bit more friendly. So we have this metal barrier, which I'm going to stretch out a little bit with Node Controller to match up with the concrete barriers, and then add one of these crash barrels on the front and some stripe markers as well. There are a few more signs that I missed, like these merge signs. And of course we need our exit signs as well. So I'm just going to take this template that I made for the signs that we made previously and adjust this as needed for each exit. And I didn't just want to have the exit signs, I also wanted to have the interstate sign just to remind anyone who happens to have gotten on the freeway without actually knowing where they're going, which probably happens more often than you might think. I don't know for sure, though. For lighting, I'm mostly just going to be filling in some of these gaps, like at these long nodes that we have. The game won't spawn in the built-in lights, so I'm just going to have to add some there. And then I removed the built-in lights from this stretch of freeway. I thought it made more sense to have, since we already have lights on the ramps, on the outside of the ramps, I thought it made more sense to have lights for the interior freeway in the center so that you don't have as much overlap from each of those lights, if that makes any sense. And then also, for some reason, the lights on top of the traffic light props that I plopped don't actually function at night, so I had to add some lamps to the intersection as well. Just a few more things to take care of this episode. I wanted to add a key wall here so that we really get the feeling of a sunken freeway here. Even though it's kind of only half sunken, you have the hilly side of downtown above on one side and then the flat shoreline on the other, but I think you get the idea. We're also eventually actually going to run a rail line through here on this little strip of grass, but that's a problem for another episode. I didn't really want to do it. It's kind of something I was forced into doing. But again, we'll get to that later. And then I also wanted to bound this area on the other side with a small access road running from this main avenue here underneath the bridge. Game crash, don't worry about that. And that way we can just get a nice clear border of the area we need to fill in over the next couple episodes, because we are going to finish up our version of Canal Park within the next 2 episodes. Thank you so much for watching the 3rd episode of Amaranth Bay. I really hope you've been enjoying this series. I know that I have been having a lot of fun putting it together, so I can't wait to see you on the next one. See ya!